Welcome back. It's the news review right here on the AM show. We're about to dig into it, Mama V. A lot to talk about, but one thing is obvious. The PPA boss is trending. He's practically in every newspaper. Well, almost every newspaper we're looking at this morning.
Absolutely.
So how about we dig into the details?
Yes. Let me start with the Daily Graphic. I think it's been a while since I started with the graphic. So let's do it. Daily Graphic newspaper, front page. This is a big one. Non-compliance with safety protocols. Second wave COVID-19 likely. Ghana Health Service warns, and it's largely attributed to the fact that many of us disrespect the COVID protocols now. There's a story that you find in one of the papers where there is a parliamentary candidate who's pulled a huge crowd over the weekend with a walk, and you know that's
you're talking of the Asenso Boache
exactly and we're talking about how people are disrespecting the protocols, and there's a warning of a second wave. Who's speaking here? Well, he is the leader of the risk communication for COVID-19 National Task Force. That's Dr. Dakosa Abuaje. He said the posture of the public was causing a gradual rise in active cases, and that if care was not taken, the nation would see a major rise soon. Active cases of the disease had risen from 309 to 589. I'm just mixing the numbers in my head within the last few weeks, with the number of deaths standing at 320. So that's the warning that's been given there. Also on the front page, voter register printing starts Wednesday. That is early, actually, because the Electoral Commission had given some 2 weeks more to do that. They brought it forward. We'll share a bit of the details with you. Also, we'll deal with troublemakers. Minister declares at Graphic Town Hall meeting in Kumasi. There's a special feature in the center spread, COVID-19 vaccine waiting with bated breath. On the back page, Savannah region to get solid waste treatment facility. There are other stories in some of the inside pages we will share with you a bit later on, Ben.
Let's move on to the Finder newspaper. Now, just because you made mention of that story, it's captured on page 9 of the Finder newspaper, and it says, Asenso Boache pulls mammoth health walk in Kumasi. I guess the health walks are now the in thing. But interestingly, even from a shot that was taken and it's been placed in, this newspaper, you can see a lot of people without masks. You can see some of them with masks under their chins, and of course, some of them wearing the masks. Interestingly, this is what I find a bit disturbing. You would see the very people, the prominent people, the leaders, the political party big wigs in the masks, but the people themselves are not in the masks, which is why I've said that it's either you control it, or maybe like some party people have done in recent times, they distribute masks for the people. Whichever way, let's protect ourselves. We can't deal with a second wave of, the coronavirus. And here, Asenso Boache, who actually displaced Ochim Abuaje in Bantama, is the culprit here. But that's just it with that story. Then Ghanaians confident in EC, that's according to a CDD survey. There's a whole lot to digest when it comes to that survey, actually. The MPP has a big lead over the NDC in CDD poll. Now, a lot of people mistrust the polls, but at least the CDD, it was pretty interesting reading what they put together. And according to them, realistic campaign promises, the MPP has 69% of them, the NDC 58%, actually supporting or thinking that their promises are credible enough. Ability to deliver on campaign promises, MPP 65%, NDC 50%. But how all of that reflect on election day, that's the interesting part. Development Bank of Ghana gets $250 million World Bank support. President sacks PPA CEO. And Ghanaians prefer peaceful elections to free and fair elections. So in other words, some Ghanaians are willing in a way to sacrifice the free and fair bit if we're going to have peace. But how can you have peace when it's not free and it's not fair? That's it with the Finder newspaper this morning.
Let's do the New Publisher newspaper. Front page of the New Publisher. Savannah region gets share of solid waste treatment facility. That's here, but here's the banner headline. Jail this man, and the man they refer to, Ajeni Boateng J, former PPA boss. Public cry for head of PPA boss. Police officer missing after visiting plots of land at Isuboy. His name is Charles Adamu. There's a photograph of him on the front page. NDC would destroy free SHS according to the Education Minister. A bit of the story on page 2 about the police officer missing. Police personnel and residents of Isuboy and nearby communities near Suhom in the Eastern region are continuing the search for a 50-year-old police officer who's been missing for days now. Charles Adamu, the police inspector, who is a driver attached to the police hospital in Accra, reportedly went missing Friday, October 30, when he visited his plot of land at the Isuboy area in the Ayenswano district. His wife reported to the police that her husband did not return to the house. Police investigators went to the scene and found a police vehicle used by the missing officer parked at the roadside near his plots with the ignition key on. Kweku Afari, former assembly member for the Isuboy electoral area, told Star News there was public announcement Sunday morning where the youth were mobilized to help Suhum police search for the missing police officer. Well, we do hope that he's found and he is well. Okay, so that's it for the paper, I guess.
The Ghanaian Times this morning, fallout from contract for sale documentary, Manasseh Azuri, are winning there. PPA CEO's appointment terminated over conflict of interest and misconduct. Don't you forget, that is just one angle of the conversation. There also is the other angle of corruption. And we await hearing from the special prosecutor, Martin Amidu. Now, President promises clean Ghana as he cuts off for Savannah region, 15 million euro solid waste treatment facility. That is the story there. So a clean Ghana. What happened to the clean Accra cleaner city in Africa agenda? I only ask that because the Minister for Sanitation and Water Resources, Cecilia Abinadapa, at a point in time said, oh, we are 80-something% through. But especially when the rains pour, you see your level.
Yeah, irrespective of that, she still insists that they've made a lot of progress.
No one can say they've not made progress, but 80%, that's something. Don't allow politicians to deploy you for violence. Peace Council chairman urges youth. We should be saying former, actually, because there's a new Peace Council. It's just that we've not had an inauguration. The Spectator gets new editor. And then Cocoa Life program introduces technology to boost production. On the back page, Cocoa Life program introduces technology to boost production. That's it with the Ghanaian Times this morning.
This is the Ghanaian publisher, and there's this story that's of interest. Ex-MPs to be made consultants for Parliament, according to the majority leader. Well, he says in the story that they may have to constitute some outgoing members into a group of consultants to help crafting of bills in the next Parliament. And according to him, the service of these MPs to the House is invaluable, and therefore their absence could affect the passage of bills, hence the need to somehow retain their expertise.
You see, this is a double-edged sword for me. Good. Institutional memory. When you have the likes of Alban Bagbin and some of those who are leaving Parliament, you would think, well, these people have been here for donkey years. There's a lot they can impart. But on the other end, more money going somewhere, consultancy. Charlie. Me with my, I'm sorry, my mistrust of the system. We have a
lot of those who contribute greatly to the committees, and we know a lot of the work is done at the committee levels, and most of them are going, you know, which will greatly affect their work. I knew it would come to this. It would come to this. But the thing is, you know, when you dedicate your time and resources to do the typical work of Parliament, the people in the constituencies, they don't know that.
No. You'll be voted out. You'll be the first person
and that's
to
what
be
has
voted
happened,
out.
I guess, in most of these cases, sadly.
I just hope this move, though, doesn't seriously impact our state's coffers. That's my only concern there.
Yeah.
The Daily Dispatch says, later CDD research findings out, NPP has 15 percentage points advantage over the NDC. Now we're sounding like the United States. Housing conditions in northern, upper east and upper west regions, nothing to write home about. Election 2020, 51% to vote on infrastructural needs. That's according to the CDD's report. If infrastructure is going to be that topical, then you know where we're headed. Shraj advises Akufo-Addo to sack PPA boss. He could not explain $600,000 and 3.8 million US dollars in his accounts. Quite a chunk of money, wouldn't you say? And when you go to page 8, it talks about Kenny Ofori-Atta and how he would spend the 27.4 billion Ghana cedis that he requested for the first quarter of 2021. So those are some interesting stories from the Daily Dispatch, dispatched by yours truly.
Let's do the Daily Guide. Front page, it says 51,000 WASI results withheld under Mahama over school fees. CDD rates NPP over NDC on delivery. Nana fires PPA boss over contract for sale scandal. There's the fired Ajeni Boateng AJ, a photograph of him on the front page. But there's a very disturbing one also here. Voter rebels, in quotes, plan fresh attack. It says all police formations in the Volta region are on high alert as intelligence indicate fresh attack from a group in the Volta region who claim they want to secede from Ghana and form what they call Western Togoland. There are 3 groups. The paper writes, talks about the previous attacks, but I guess if you go on to read, it will share where that information is coming from in terms of the fresh attack they talk about.
Right, the Custodian newspaper is next for me. Let's find out what they've taken custody of. It's only the story that appears to drift a bit from the trajectory we followed so far. Boss exposes Mahama on NDC's $624 million debt and mismanagement. Picture there of Mr. Edwin Alfred Provençal, the boss MD. When you go to the back page, you can also check out some sporting news. Full list of 2020-2021 Ghana Premier League transfers completed by all 18 clubs. Photo there of the man Asamoah Baby Jet Jan, who has joined Legon City's FC. It appears they all want to come back home and wrap it up. Sule Muntari and all of that. I think that's beautiful.
Sule's going to South Africa, isn't he?
Who?
Sule.
Well, I've heard news about his coming to Hearts, to Kotoko, and all of that.
Oh.
I don't know how true.
I read he was being linked to. Yeah, he's going to South Africa.
But I hear the South African move has actually panned out. I'm just saying that in the end, if they wrap up their careers here, it would also inspire some others. But
is it for that? Because I know Samoa Jan's deal is a proper deal with lots of money.
It must be lucrative. I mean, you can't bring in a baby jet and pay him peanuts. But the whole intent, you know, in many of these other countries, players after playing in the big leagues in Europe, they want to go, if it's, you know, Netherlands, for example, they want to go wrap up with maybe the club they started with and all of that. And it's a good thing because then there's inspiration for the younger ones.
I don't know if money is the motivation really, because we've seen how our own Black Star players, they come and play for the national team and they take money. We discuss the huge monies that we give them all the time, but we know that their counterparts elsewhere usually do it for the nation.
Mamavi,
you know, pride.
I think the days are gone when people played for, you know, national pride and all of that. Now, it's all about the money, money, money.
Yeah.
Countryman Songo reacts to Jan's GPL return. This one you ought to read. It's on the back page of the Custodian.
Last paper for me, the Pallava. The new Pallava, they call it. Ghana third in World Survey on COVID-19 control. But here's one of interest. Atufosun drags Japan to court seeking damages for defamation. That story is on page 7 in the paper today. Let's see if we can share a bit of that. It says Kesel Atufosun, Member of Parliament for Ejumako Enyane Siam, is in court asking the court to compel Kennedy Japan, Member of Parliament for Asen Central, to provide evidence and explanation for accusing him of being behind the suspected plan to assassinate the Minister for Gender and Social Protection. He filed the case at the Accra High Court against the Asen Central MP and his Kent City Media Ghana Limited. Oh, and then of course there's this one, Ghana to hit record fiscal deficit by end 2020, according to the IMF, and the paper is sharing some more on it. It says Ghana's fiscal deficit is projected to hit 16.4% of gross domestic products end 2020, making it the largest ever in the country's history. This is according to the International Monetary Fund. The fiscal deficit projection is contrary to that of the finance minister's revised 11.4% target for end 2020, as stated in the mid-year budget review. And I listened to Newsfile on Saturday. Well, sometimes, you know, when the issues are so big, like they look very complicated, you want to listen to programs like Newsfile where they break the things down. And I like Theo A. Champong as he talked about, you know, the issues related to debts.
Yep.
Because of the conversation about HIPIC, I think what is factual is the fact that there's high debt distress, no room for extra fiscal spending, low revenue mobilization, high interest rates. That's facts. Okay.
Well, let's
You're
start.
done with the papers?
Well, yeah. You
Okay.
have a few more?
No, I'm sure.
All right. Let's start digging into them. Now, today I'm going to start with a curious one, not one I would usually start with. The New Independent newspaper. It's because it captures, on the political front, two very interesting stories. Reject NDC's Ato Forcing. Chief charges voters in the Ejumako Enyan constituency. You know where I'm headed with this one.
I know.
And the chief is basically saying that he's bemoaning the negative effects of skirt and blouse on progress in the area. Now, the Oman Hene of Enyan Abasa, traditional area in the Ejumako Enyan Esiam district of the Central Region, Nana Kwame Akolu X, has charged voters in the Ejumako Enyan Esiam constituency not to vote skirt and blouse in this year's general elections. Now, skirt and blouse, of course, we know is a local term for voting for candidates in different parties for president and member of parliament. And he is saying it is impeding, developmental
I've got a question, Ben.
progress
So
in
if we
the
say
area.
chiefs should not participate in partisan politics, I hear this is obviously a clear one where he's, making the call that don't vote
citing
for this
something
party.
important.
So my point is, should we be reporting it?
Well, in terms of
Do you get what I mean?
The police, the papers have put this out there, and it's interesting because I get what you mean. Sometimes the police would tell you, for example, that if something has not been officially reported to them, they may have heard it, but they're not going to all of that. But should it get to that point where we have to report chiefs?
No. What I mean is, as in, let's not report what we think is unconstitutional. You get what I mean? So don't ignore what
We
they're
shouldn't
saying.
even touch on it.
Exactly. That's my point.
But that would only allow room for the situation to fester and become even worse when you ignore it. It would be like saying, okay, it's going on, but let's not talk about it anymore.
Yeah, but
let's just leave it as it is. It's a recipe for
But
disaster.
is there something being done as they still continue to do? So my point is, don't give it
Mileage.
more. Exactly.
On the other hand,
Don't put it on
the
mass
other hand,
media.
it would be, in a way, naming and shaming. Because now some people would, someone doesn't know that his or her chief said this. Oh, my chief said that. Oh, no, Papa, no. How did he descend into
so
this?
that's the other
so
angle,
there are different angles
Wow.
to this. But this other story I'll do from here, and it's a wrap for this paper. No spirit, no human being can stop NDC's victory. I'm tying that into the Finder story that says NPP has big lead over NDC in CDD poll. If time suffices, I'll get into that. But on page 4, it says, no spirit, no human being can stop NDC's victory. The Deputy General Secretary of the largest opposition, NDC, Peter Boamao Tukuno, has indicated victory in the upcoming December general election for the party, and he says it's inevitable. He based this assertion on his feedback from the campaign trail of the opposition NDC and noted that there is an assurance from everywhere in the country that the grounds are fertile for the NDC to win the upcoming general election. So interesting times. Some polls showing that the NPP, the incumbent administration, is going to be in a bit of a comfortable lead, if I may pun a bit. But there are others who also say that no, it's going to be neck and neck, and there is a chance for the NDC. We all wait for December 7th. From tomorrow, the US will know its smoothness level. December 7th, what, 37 days away? We'll find out. We'll find our own. So it's a wrap for me on that.
Okay, great. There's this story that I promised would share a bit of it in the Daily Graphic, is on page 3. Voters register printing starts Wednesday. The printing of the final biometric voters register for the December 7 polls will begin on Wednesday, November 4. Ahead of that, the EC will make soft copies of the register available to all registered political parties and any other person that the EC considers necessary. And the deputy chairperson of the EC in charge of operations told the Daily Graphic in Accra yesterday that although the calendar activities slated the printing of the voters register for November 8th, quotes were set to start printing way ahead of this date on quote. We'll be seeking to find some answers on the allegation being made by the NDC, though, that the Electoral Commission is printing a lot more ballots, and they're even printing some of the ballots, same printing house, but on the blind side of the political party agents. That's a big one that we'll be looking into later on here on our show.
Well, let's turn to page 3. It's actually pages 3, 5, and 6, but I'll focus on page 3 of the Daily Dispatch, and it talks about housing conditions in former northern region, especially as we have the EcoBank Habitat Fair, pivotal issue to look at. And it says, it cites UN standards, the definition of a house as a structurally separate and independent place of abode such that a person or group of persons can isolate themselves from the hazards of the climate. It was raining a short while ago, such as storms and sun. And maybe the question to ask you is, are you in a house? It's quite a question, because in this country, in Zimbabwe, but the types of material that are used to construct houses in the northern region include galvanized zinc, cement, mud, grass, wood, and stone. You heard me right, grass, wood, and the rest. The larger the household size, the more likely it is that there will be overcrowding as far as room occupancy is concerned, which may lead to the spread of communicable diseases. Now, some statistics, some information is put out here, but if you look at the housing stock, according to a table here, it presents the housing stock and average household size by district. The Tamale metropolis with the highest proportion at 13.9% of the total housing stock, followed by Yendi municipality 7.4%, the total housing stock in the region being 257,311, including completed houses which were not occupied at the time of the census. The thrust of this, the fact that housing conditions in the former northern region and some splitting in there are not what we would, see. Question is, what are we doing about it? Even when it comes to housing, a lot of the time the focus is in the capital and surroundings. Sagleme is closer to, the capital and Tema and all of that. Or you would have a Kumasi. You remember the John Ejekum Kufuor structures, which recently the president told us he would, complete and all of that. But what happens up north, the Northern Belt? The Northern Belt, since even before independence, has always had its problems when it comes to development. Here we are. And that, at a point in time, it even necessitated something that our constitution frowns on. It necessitated the creation of a political party called the Northern People's Party. But of course, we know that that no longer applies. You can't form a party on ethnic lines and all of that. But I think development in the Northern Belt, nothing to write home about.
Absolutely. It's, slower still. Let's spend some time on myjoyonline.com. In the absence of any other story that you want to put the spotlight on.
For Mr. Ejanim Boateng Ejay, we'll be delving into his matter, so I'll leave out his stories for now.
There are plenty angles of Myjoy Online as well. Our colleague, our correspondent Joseph Akable did a fantastic job with that ruling, breaking it down. And so if you go on myjoyonline.com, we've actually made it a lot easier for you to appreciate the entire report of Shrash. Lots of pages, but broken down pretty well on Myjoy Online. Here's one of it. Ajeni Boateng Ejay altered board decisions to favor his company, according to that ruling. And then, that's also another one, still on Ajeni Boateng Ejay, unable to explain 14.8 million Ghana cedis in his bank accounts. And if you look at details of it, he's had several accounts, foreign accounts, as in dollar, pounds, and he deposited within a specific period lots of money that, according to Shrash, he could not explain. So you might want to read that as well and get a fair appreciation. NDC raises red flags over anomalies in printing of ballot papers. There's a playback of The Probe, which discussed provisions of security for citizens, MPs ahead of election 2020. MFR Powell and Mr. Hackman, also Ajiman. Great interaction there. You might want to catch up if you missed it. On election 2020, or election 2020 will determine the direction of the country, according to the Vice President. Also, NDC and PP to justify manifesto promises on energy at separate town hall meeting. We want to, we meant no harm. Charles clears the air on review of free SHS policy. And I'm just looking forward to a point where when CHAS, for instance, heads of assisted senior high schools, right? They make a point and they don't have to come back and clarify.
This sounds so much like an apology for saying what they believe.
Yeah, which is really true. They talk about PTA projects being abandoned because the policy did not take into consideration the parent-teacher association. It actually almost doesn't exist now. Meanwhile, they used to play a certain part, and they want the policy to take a relook at that. What's wrong with that?
It's obvious someone has been breathing down their necks, and you have to come and
said, this is issue some year, sort of we're very close to December 7th, and you're saying this.
And that has always been my problem.
If we want to build strong associations and institutions, then we have to leave politics out of policy statements that groups like these make. And we need strong leadership even at the forefront of these groups.
But that's the problem, because even with the leadership, whether you're talking of even the teachers' unions and all of that, they are also political. And so sometimes they would do or not do, they would act or not act based on their political stance. If it's X in power, they will act in a certain way. If it's Y in power, they'll act in a different way. But something I feel aggrieved about this morning, the papers are not capturing anything with regard to the International Day to End, impunity for crimes against journalists. And on My Joy Online, there was a story there by Manasseh who was saying that he felt safe, and Mahama, is he insinuating he's not safe now? I don't know, but as we talk about this on a day like this, it's something we ought to be
That's the story that you're referring to. As a journalist, I felt safe under Mahama's administration and not Kufuor. That's Manasseh Azuria winning. The gentleman who broke the story that's making the biggest headline today in terms of the former PPA boss and what Shraj has done. Subsequently, we know that the president issued a statement saying that he had sacked him, and people say, well, that isn't enough. What has the special prosecutor also done with regards to what he was also asked to do with the corruption?
Let me just sneak this in. So yesterday, I encountered a group from the National Blood Service doing quite a bit of work for Mother Ghana. I just want to shout, Harriet, Joyce, and Safua, you're doing a good job for Mother Ghana. Only say they checked my hemoglobin level was high, 15.2, but Charlie, I just wasn't feeling it. It's missing next time.
So you didn't donate?
Oh, not yesterday. I usually do, but I've not been.
So you're one of those who just walk there and ordinarily and donate?
No, this was a church thing.
Oh, okay.
It was a church thing. But quite a bit of sacrifice they're putting in there. Shouts to all of you.
Yeah, and shout out to those who ordinarily, when they haven't heard there's a blood donation exercise, but they still make it a point to donate every now and then. There are people who do that.
You can walk into Kolebu. My brother, for example, he's and sometimes you never know. It could not just save a relative or someone close to you. Someday, when you go and there's an emergency, once they know that you're a donor, it would be snip, snip for you. So save a life.
Yeah. Okay, I guess that's it for us with the review. Stay for Rikwampo for coming up. He will tell you all that you missed in the English Premier League, for instance, and talk about the deals that has been reached. Asamoah Gyan now has made a move to Legon Cities. What kind of difference is it going to bring to the club? Yeah, that's coming up in sports.